John Nicholson.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is an absurd illogicality about this country's debate over nuclear weapons. We are debating whether to spend upwards of £150 billion on a weapon system we will never fire because it is entirely redundant. Now, supporters of Trident would have us impoverish our grandchildren for an arsenal last effective in the 20th century. Once upon a time, the enemy was clear. It was the Soviet Union. The balance of terror argument was equally clear. If Stalin or Khrushchev, Brezhnev or Gorbachev threatened us with invasion, we had the capacity to murder millions of Warsaw Pact citizens. But those days are now long gone. We cannot threaten nuclear annihilation against a Daesh death cult embedded in civilian areas, which is why the Defence Secretary struggled so badly this morning when asked to explain how Trident offered a defence against terrorism. But look at Mr. Putin, warned the nuclear apologists. He might threaten us, and only Trident will stand in the way. It's an argument beyond absurd. Thus far, Putin has brutalised Chechnya, invaded Georgia, annexed part of Chechnya, and bombarded Syria, all against our will. He has a strategy as old as Russian foreign policy itself, and Britain's nuclear fig leaf does not deter him one jot. As Lord Bramall, former Chief of the General Staff, put it, Trident, for all practical purposes, has not and would not deter any of the threats likely to face this country in the foreseeable or longer-term future. Yes, I will.
Just very briefly, the government motion asks us to vote for a minimum credible nuclear deterrent. Would it not be better if the government had brought forward plans for minimum credible conventional forces, which strikes me as much more pertinent?
It would indeed, because our conventional forces have been starved of cash. We have no conventional ocean-going surface ships based in Scotland, despite frequent Russian intrusions into our waters. We have built aircraft carriers without aircraft to fly off them, and the necessary surface ships and submarines for protection. We have complaints from senior armed forces officials about the lack of appropriate equipment for our soldiers on the ground, directly contributing to deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan, as described by Shilcott. As Michael Clark, Director General of the Royal United Services Institute, puts it, the one thing that politicians don't address when they talk about Britain's nuclear weapons is how they do or don't actually figure in practical defence policy. It is really very depressing. Well, we on these benches choose to defy that stereotype. We want to put logic at the heart of the UK's defence policy. It's what our voters want. It's also what much of the military wants. Major General Sir Patrick Cornley spells it out for the armchair generals who sit on the benches opposite, telling us that there is no purpose to it. So I appeal to my colleagues here on the Labour benches. Vote with us. Follow your consciences. Do not vote for a missile system, the equivalent of a cavalry charge, when the machine gun is already introduced.